We'll be starting in a minute's time. So I'd like people to just talk about how they felt the test was, and then we will keep discussing it in detail. So trigger board question, Rini is asking. Yeah, 7 minus root 3 is right. Good evening, Rini. So let's start with the quant section. Let's start talking about the quant section. What was my feeling of the quant section, comparing it to last year's test, whatever. So I'll tell you one thing which I liked about the quant section was there were some questions which are straightforward sitters. When I would say sitters, that means, these are the type of questions you would even expect as at an NMAT or yeah, I'll come to the other sections as we go ahead. So there were sitters which were very straightforward, like I'll go about way they were in my paper. So basically, if I talk about the question of looking at, okay, let's first go about the whole paper. Obviously, there was no change in the pattern of the paper, so that was expected. They more or less confirmed all that. No change in pattern. Test overview, everything remains same. Okay. I will come back to this slide. This is what we are expecting you to get, whatever, but we'll come back to this slide. So don't worry about this. Yeah, somebody said VLR was tricky, and we also agree VLR was tricky. Okay, now let's start with Quant first. So this is the slide where we're going to talk about, and let's start with Quant. So you can see that I'm traveling, so maybe some places network will break off. So you'll have to bear with me for that. Okay. So let's start with Quant. I found Quant, the questions which are straightforward were very, very easy, and some which were difficult were obviously difficult. So it was easy to leave them. That's what I always want in a test, Questions which are easy should be straightforward. I can identify them, I can do them, and that's how I get them very quickly. I don't waste too much time also. And the ones which are difficult, I want to leave them immediately. Okay, so if I start with question, the first question which I had was where we talk about of the area of the circle and the area of the square, if the perimeter and the circumference are same. Very, very like concept-based question. Then one question on that interest of the mobile phone was 6,000 rupees. I think the answer to that question was 1,20,000. Couple of questions from this topic were there. Coordinate geometry. Now that was a surprise. Okay. Which was a big surprise. Coordinate geometry last year, I don't think so. There was anything from coordinate geometry. But this time there were two questions, one very easy, one slightly difficult, more difficult from the sensor, from that point of view that you had to go through every option and then eliminate the option. Now, in my case, that option was the fifth option, which was false option. Okay. So besides that, couple of data sufficiency questions as usual. One data sufficiency question where basically it was a cyclic quadrilateral, two angles were 90, opposite angles were 90, and the other two were not 90. And we had been given one diagonal as 225 and so on, 225, 255. Could you find it or not? So that was one question. Uh, as Rini asked earlier, the question about the robot, that was a pretty interesting one. Basically, the hand of the robot, because at 60 degrees, could extend up to root 3. And we wanted to reach 7. We wanted to reach 7 feet. So hence answer will be 7 minus root 3. Error I found in DI. I'll come to the DI error, which I found. Obviously, we'll have to analyze it once it comes. Maybe I missed out something. Okay. So according to me, Quant was pretty straightforward, especially all the questions from arithmetic were very straightforward. Not too much detailed algebra was asked. So that was a good part. Not very difficult algebra was there. So I'm just looking at your comments also and just checking what you all, pi by 4 is correct. What is the GOT question? I don't know. So DI ratio 1. I'll come to that. I'll come to DI. Just give me a couple of minutes before we'll just talk about Quant first. Any other Quant questions which you all want to talk about? We can discuss that questions since I have maybe gone through most of them. Tanay, very frankly, rhetorical question right now. Let's talk about what we want to discuss about the test, how the test was. So as There was a very interesting question on cube root of something 3 raised to a and 21 raised to something and 49 raised to something, and which of the options was there. The log question was very easy. I thought log question was straightforward. Log there were, I think the answer was 2 because you get a quadratic and you just had to check whether the roots were not imaginary, and if they were not imaginary, and hence I think 2. Yeah, exactly. Aryan, your answer for the other one also is right. A minus B and 2. A minus B or A minus 2B. I don't remember, Aryan. Something like that was there. So I'm coming to DI, I think so. Okay, I'm data sufficiency question on coordinate geometry. Can you remind me the question of data sufficiency? I don't think so. Data sufficiency was there from coordinate geometry. I remember one data sufficiency from regular geometry. Okay. Okay, maybe I'm just not recollecting it. If you have more details, just put it down. Maybe I'll recollect as I go ahead. So one data sufficiency was very easy. Minus 2, 0 and 2, 0 was C and D ka coordinates. So AB will be parallel to it. So that was very straightforward. Okay. Now coming to DI. Okay. Somebody asked me, do you feel there was any error? I felt the DI set where there were missing values and the average was given 4, 4, 4 and 4.25. And again, average over here also was 4, 4, 4 and 4.25. That I thought was, I think there was an error in one of the questions in that set. The first question which was there in my paper, which was like R1 to A. If you give one number, can you find out the whole data? I thought that was not possible. Then that was an interesting question about that grid thing. The game, computer game, the computer puts a X when you press the button once. Answer to that question was 13. Okay. Answer to that question was 13. So then from DI, there was one on time speed distance, slightly lengthy, but I thought again was easy and manageable. You could have easily done that. Okay. So that was one more thing you could, that was Anish, 13 answer for which one are you saying? Yeah, A minus B and C was the, A minus 2B and C was the answer for that one question. 13 was the answer for that question. No, Aryan, you're wrong. 4 was not the answer. So, for example, how many maximum they are asking? So, along the diagonal, you can keep skipping one. So, if you start with row 1, you can skip row 1, column 1. Then in second row, you can skip row 2, column 2, row 3, column 3, row 4, column 4. And that way, 4 you skip. So, after 12, when you put the 13th one, you will always get it. One of the rows and one of the column will get done that way. Yeah, Tanay, you're right. The last question was 120 kilometers per hour in the TSD set, where that new road had to be constructed. So 120 kilometers per hour is the right answer. Okay. Aryan, I don't know 4. I'll have to go home and check that one more time. I'm going to go and solve that thing one more time. I have in mind kept that set there because I would want to go and check it one more time. So obviously it was either 4 or 5, but we're not sure. So I felt, so we'll just talk about what all was there in DI. DI, there was one set on that average thing, one set on time speed distance, one on graph was there, where there was a base of 2025 and 2005 and 15 ka data was given. That set you could have done by counting those boxes instead of actually counting values. If you count the boxes, it gets done much faster. I don't immediately recollect the fourth set. If somebody can remind me what the fourth set was, we can talk about it. Maybe Sidra, Aryan, you all are saying 4. With 4 also, I was getting 2 cases. And I checked with a colleague of mine also. He also said the same thing. With 4 also, we were getting 2 cases. So both of us got the same thing. So maybe the circular path Omkar is one question of quant which I have not attempted, I would say. I mean, I've attempted, I marked the answer for it, but I'm not very sure. I want to just discuss that. Anybody recollects the fourth set of DI? one was graph, one was time, speed, distance, one was averages. Anybody recollects the fourth one? Oh yeah, the fourth one was two friends writing the test of eight tests. Yeah, I think that was a very simple set, very straightforward. You just take uh, so good number of attempts. Now let's come to that. Now see, this is what the data speaks about. If you look at what I've just put down, it'll show on your slide just a second. If you look at the data, numbers I would say were straightforward, easy. Okay. So around, I would say 6 to 7 questions were straightforward and they were very easy. And those are the questions you should have directly got. Out of the medium questions, also you can get a couple of questions right, and then should not be too much of a problem. So Quant is taken care of. Good number of attempts, close to what, 16, 17 in 50, 55 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how much time you've taken for the other ones. I always have mentioned this earlier also in all of my videos, is that your overall cutoff will always depend on QADI. Omkar is asking what was the answer for the 2 to 40 integer. I think that was 4. Omkar, the answer to that question was 4. Yeah, there are prime numbers after 20. Right? That was the logic. All prime numbers after 20 before 40. So you get, I think, a 23 and a 29, then a 31 and then 37. 4 numbers. Graph was super lengthy, Sidra. That depends on how you did it. So there was a very good trick to do the graph. When I make the video, I'll show you the trick. Basically, you just have to count the number of points. So except the last question, none of the other questions required too much calculation. So very frankly, if I was doing it in the test scenario, I would have left the last question. So that's what I did in the test. Actually, I left the last question because that was unnecessarily lengthy. I had to solve all 5 options. But other 2 questions were very straightforward, Sidra, and that one. The gender gap one, yes. Okay. So good attempts over here, 16, 17, 18. 17, 18 is my call. Time allocation, as I said, 55, 60 minutes, depending on how good you are, whatever you are with. Probability question, can you read? So probability question, I think the answer was 8 by 15, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have to check one more time. That is what I am marked. The room question was a nice question. I think the answer was 77,000 something. What was the option for 77,000 ke saath? 77,500. Yeah, 4 by 4 grid, we already discussed. Komal, answer was 13, you're right. Circular distribution, I'm not very sure, maybe 250, but not very sure. So we'll have to kind of wait for that one. Yeah, whatever, 77,500, 600, whatever that option was, that was the option. Okay. Now, I will move on to the next section from the QADI section. So QADI, our data says that we should have attempted around 17 to 18 questions, giving around 55 to 60 minutes. Cutoff will remain very close to last year, XAT 24. I'll tell you why. Because nothing changed drastically. If you look at the test, nothing in the test changed drastically. The test more or less remained as it was like last year. And hence, I would say cutoff will remain very close to XAT 24. It will not change drastically. Jay, I don't remember that was 8 by 15 or 7 by 15. I'll have to just check that. We'll come to that. We'll check it later. Okay. Let's talk about the DM section first. I want to go first. So DM, let's try and recollect the sets. I don't know whether anybody noticed one thing in the DM section this time. is that the DM section, most of the sets were based on things which have happened in real life situation. Obviously, if you have experienced them or if you've read about them, it's slightly easier to evaluate, right? Like how many people realize that set of DM, uh, the college admission wala, where the fees are returned? Anybody can tell me what was that set? Fees are returned wala set? Hmm? Yeah, MDI pay. That was exactly what happened with MDI last year or last to last year. And then that same based on that, they've created the same set. So obviously, if you had read a little bit about that time, data about that time, you would have maybe understood a few things. The MBA question, right? Not that it makes answering the questions easy or difficult. I think they're still difficult to answer. Then one was that shop in the gated community, which happened a lot during COVID. A lot of shops opened in a lot of these gated community kind of buildings. And based on that, the set was there. The hospital set. One thing which I found bad about the DM section this time was, very frankly, was, you know what? That in the DM section, the names of the places and the name of the people were all such horrible tongue twisters. Like last year, I remember the names were so straightforward. Mr. Singh or something like that. The names were all straightforward. This time, all terrible names. Okay. The hospital said, I have, that was one of the caselets which I have not attempted. So I attended 6 caselets. I did not attempt the hospital one. I was reading somewhere that that was slightly easier, but maybe lack of time was slightly lengthy. So I decided to skip that. Okay. What other DM sets did you all do? Tell me. So DM, as like usual, you should have attempted 4 to 5 sets, maybe 5 sets. 5 caselets is a good number of caselets to attempt DM. You should not attempt more than that. Then there was this law firm may uh, ragging when people join by the people, the employers only. How are they handling things? All that. So that was an interesting set. I found that set very interesting. Exactly like how offices may what happens. How do you, for working people, they would have been able to solve that set better. Then there was that one more set where uh, the the employers are very good towards the publication, newspaper, the newspaper set where that. So in any of the sets where, so very frankly, as we have mentioned, if you have gone through last 3 to 4 years ka DM, uh, if you have gone through the last 3 to 4 years ka DM, the conditions were more or less based on the same logic. I'm still telling you that doesn't mean that I have marked maybe say 18 answers or 17 questions I marked answer to. Right now, I'm feeling they are correct. But when the answer key comes out or the response sheet will come out, you don't know what will happen. I might get 8 wrong also. Yeah, the ticket selling was like what happened with the Book My Show thing. Not exactly on those lines, but something on similar lines. But there were very nice some keywords over there to identify. So he, when that 40,000 tickets are sold instead of 50,000, he has told his employer, that new person who has joined, he has told his employer that it will take a couple of years. That part, if you have read that part very carefully, that he says that it will take a couple of years. And then obviously you will understand the answer. The reaction cannot be a harsh reaction. Okay. Anything else in DM we want to discuss? So DM, very frankly, as usual, you should be aiming for just the cutoffs. If you're able to clear the cutoff, great. You should feel happy, and then it should not be a problem. As I've been saying so much, I feel the DM cutoff will go down by half a mark or 1 mark compared to last year. That's my feeling. When I look at the last year ka DM and I look at this year ka DM, I have a feeling the DM cutoff will go down by half a mark or maybe 1 mark also. Okay. VALR, as you all know, I am not the right person to take a do a discussion about, but from what I solved, what little bit I solved, and what little bit I could understand, I felt like the first 8 questions, 7, 8 questions were pretty okay. They were not very difficult. The I think hypocrisy, where hypocrisy was the option, that option can would most probably 4,73,000 वाले का answer क्या कौन सा Nishika? Which question are you talking about, Nishka? Can you repeat that question in number like that? 4,73,000. The fan, uh, with the fan and the man ka relationship and all that. I thought it was a slightly weird one. I don't think so. Again, obviously, I'll wait for the verbal team to take a call on how the poem was, but I would say that the poem was not a very straightforward one. Cyclic quadrilateral wala answer, what have you all marked? I think uh, using both of them also, you're not able to get the answer. 77,500 is right for the room wala thing. So cutoffs, as we've been speaking, will remain very, very close to 24. So if you all want to now have a look at this slide, we can have a look at this slide where we have put the cutoffs down. Okay. Should remain similar to last year. Maybe because of Quant, the overall cutoff might go up by 1 mark, but I have a feeling DM will go down by half a mark to 1 mark. And ALR, again, as I said, I will wait for the others to come out with the answer, this thing, and then I'll. Okay. GK surprisingly was easy. So as I said, GK surprisingly was easy. Did Gokesh defeat straightforward. Indigo Airlines, if you were able to identify Indigo Airlines, you are then able to identify. There was only one option with the right answer. Same way, if you were knowing that Zakir Hussain has won the Grammy, if Zakir Hussain has won the Grammy, then you can more or less figure out the answer for that question. Then Dronacharya Award was a very easy one. Rest all was very standard. Nobel Prize, books के बारे में, so army के बारे में, expected GK. Nothing very, very weird. Obviously, GK, some questions will be there. Again, I am not so the picture wala question. I think the answer was around, that it for people. Do we see it from other people's perspective? When we are not in other people's position, it's not easy to look at from their perspective. I think that should have been the answer. Yeah. So Neha, that Jeju Air and so on was easy. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Then we'll just wind up the session then here. We've spoken about all the cutoffs. You all can take a screenshot if you all want of this slide. This is what we estimate the cutoffs to be. Best of luck, everybody. As soon as the response sheet is out, we will make the video with the solutions and put it up on YouTube. Best of luck, everybody. See you. Bye bye.